We're coming to you from the historic Carol Burnett stage at Television City. We're thrilled to be here with you, celebrating the remarkable people and projects preserving LA's heritage. The level of excellence of projects we're honoring today are a testament that historic preservation is alive and thriving in Los Angeles County. The Los Angeles Conservancy was formed in 1978 to preserve the buildings and places important to LA County's history, from our architectural icons and cultural landmarks to our quintessential bungalow courts and legacy businesses. For 45 years, we've strengthened connections between people, places, and culture in Los Angeles. We believe that recognizing, preserving, and revitalizing historic buildings fortifies communities, fosters economic growth, and offers viable and sustainable solutions to urgent needs, including LA's housing crisis. Historic places tell our stories and enrich our lives. They're vital for the future of Los Angeles. We'd like to take a moment to recognize our returning presenting sponsor, City National Bank, back for its 23rd year. When City National first came on board as the presenting sponsor of this event, we were thrilled because it showed that preservation made good business sense. Founded right here in Los Angeles almost 70 years ago, City National Bank shares our connection to LA's history. We're grateful to have their ongoing support. We also thank all of our sponsors today. We'd also like to acknowledge our independent jury who had the difficult job of selecting our winners. Our jury chair, Devin Barnes, Principal Associate at Brewing Associates. Arturo Chavez, General Manager, El Pueblo Historic Monument. Jessica Hensier, Project Manager at Craig Lawson & Company, LLC. Andrea Mock, Real Estate Professional, Writer, Artist, and Community Preservation Advocate. And John Schwab Sims, President of the Glendale Historical Society. The 2023 Preservation Award winners illustrate what historic preservation in LA is all about: the civic pride, the sense of purpose, and of course, the passion. There are stories of friends and neighbors banding together to preserve their homes, neighborhoods, and sense of identity. Unsung advocates working to document undertold stories in communities of color to ensure these legacies are not erased from history. And triumphant examples of how old can be made new again by bringing life to long-neglected historic buildings through adaptive reuse. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. On behalf of the Los Angeles Conservancy, I'm pleased to present the winners of the 2023 Preservation Awards. First Congregational Church of Long Beach. First Congregational Church has served the greater Long Beach community for more than 100 years. Located in downtown, it is one of the city's oldest congregations and its earliest standing church structure. The red brick and terracotta building with distinctive stained glass windows was built to stand as a tower of faith in the heart of the city, a purpose that has been magnified following its recent rehabilitation.
My name is Cara Varnell, and I am a member of the First Congregational Church in Long Beach, and I am co-chair of the Historic Preservation Committee. I was drawn to the church because of the building. The building is really beautiful, but what keeps me there, of course, is the congregation.
Established in 1914 with donations and land donated by the Bixby family, one of Long Beach's founding families, the First Congregational Church of Long Beach is a striking example of Italian Romanesque revival style. Designed by architect Henry M. Patterson, the church features a 110-foot-tall corner tower, a green mission tile roof, patterned tapestry brickwork, and leaded and stained glass windows, including 3 large rose windows. For over 100 years, the historic building has been retained and protected. It was locally landmarked in 1979 and added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2012.
And then once we were awarded the place on the National Register, then it was time to start looking towards the preservation things that needed to be done. We hired someone, a historic preservation expert guy from the Midwest. And he looked around the building and he looked at the east facade and the terracotta around the rose window. And he said, "You don't have time. You have major problems."
Structural damage from the 1933 and 1965 earthquakes was repaired, but no action was taken to address a developing problem with the decorative terracotta that allowed the salty marine climate to penetrate the interior metal structure. By 2017, cracked and spalling rose window tracery posed serious risks of falling.
We have columns that border the stained glass windows on the sanctuary level floor, and those columns were collapsing into their bases. Every week it seemed to get worse.
And so began a heroic, multi-year, multi-discipline preservation effort so innovative and detailed that it set new international standards of technical excellence. Few terracotta rose windows have been dismantled, replicated, and rebuilt to such exacting benchmarks.
So they took it out and everything was numbered and recorded so they could track it. And the pieces that could be reused were reused.
The repair and restoration of the main church facade galvanized the congregation and the community. The church partnered with Long Beach Heritage to arrange public access and an educational event at the building while it was being repaired. The project was completed at the end of 2020.
I hadn't seen it without the scaffolding, and we stood there and hugged each other and cried. It was so beautiful, and it was like this, it happened. We did it.
Because of the commitment of the congregation, the First Congregational Church will continue to be a tower of faith and resilience. You don't need rose window-colored glasses to appreciate this remarkable historic preservation effort. City of Long Beach, Suburbanization and Race, Historic Context Statement. Sometimes referred to as Iowa by the Sea, the city of Long Beach is diverse, and its historic places and landmarks tell many stories. But whose stories do they preserve and tell? In 2019, as part of a larger reconciliation effort, the City of Long Beach commissioned a historic context statement on suburbanization and race to capture the important and largely overlooked stories of its communities of color, including housing segregation and the fight for civil rights. This study ensures that a rich, more holistic history of Long Beach is formally recognized and used to inform planning efforts, land use decisions, and evaluations of properties and neighborhoods for potential historic significance.
My name is Carl McBride, and I'm retired, and I was asked to participate in this program. When the project first started, I looked at the original context statement, and when it came to the ethnic groups, especially the major four, African American, Mexican American, Chinese American, and Japanese American, they had 9 pages in the whole document.
With limited written documentation, the project team created an advisory committee composed of historians, community advocates, and members of neighborhood organizations to provide guidance and input throughout the project.
My father was very popular in Long Beach. He was Mr. Civil Rights, came to Long Beach in 1930. He had to adjust because he was from Arkansas, from the South. He was an organizer first, and then later he established and was co-founder of the Long Beach branch of the NAACP. Long Beach was a pretty tough town, real tough. And in 1920, I think 25, 26, they had the Klan convention right in Long Beach, 30,000. And they estimated that 5,000 of the Klansmen were actually locals that lived in the city.
In the post-World War II era, the city aggressively annexed adjacent farmland and orange groves to compete with new cities being established nearby, causing a residential boom heavily influenced by exclusionary practices. Long Beach's racially divided residential development made it a central focus for the fair housing fight in Southern California. Research revealed stories like the groundbreaking work of the Fair Housing Foundation, established to help Long Beach residents of color fight against racist housing policies. This would become a model for fighting housing discrimination nationwide.
You know, in the 40s, Long Beach was a pretty large city, about 142,000 people, but they only had 610 black people. And that's when the fight intensified, because in order to get jobs or to get fair housing, you almost had to band together and really fight for it.
Documenting difficult history is challenging, but projects like this one by the City of Long Beach help advance historic preservation in Los Angeles County by recognizing and celebrating previously underrepresented contributors to our social, cultural, and architectural history. Listening to Carl and other community members who worked on this project demonstrates why this history is so important. The context statement ensures that this painful history will not only be told, but will influence future planning decisions in Long Beach.
My name is Joy Forbes, Vice President of Planning and Development at NBC Universal and Chair of the Board of Directors of the Los Angeles Conservancy. The Conservancy's Chair Award recognizes extraordinary contributions to LA County's historic environment. The project to earn this honor in 2023 is a testament to historic preservation's ability to bring people together and save historic places important to them and their community. Thanks to the passion and action that took place in a Beverly Grove neighborhood, a quaint bungalow court was saved from sure demolition, restored, and will soon be returned to the housing market. Where there is a will, this project shows there is a way. I'm delighted to recognize the 2023 Chairs Award winner, Edinburgh Bungalow Court.
Edinburgh Bungalow Court. Few things are as unmistakably LA as the ubiquitous bungalow court. Introduced in the early 1900s, bungalow courts were an innovative concept designed to provide simple and functional housing while encouraging a sense of community on a human scale. The design caught on, and bungalow court apartments soon dotted the Los Angeles basin throughout the 20s and 30s.
Ability of people to come out their front doors and be engaged with other people who are their neighbors without having to knock on a door or ring a doorbell is what was so attractive about them in the first place.
Many bungalow court units are also rent stabilized. For LA's notoriously unaffordable housing market, this makes bungalow courts an important part of the city's housing stock. But despite their charm, historic multifamily residential buildings are also increasingly targeted for demolition and redevelopment. The Edinburgh Bungalow Court in Beverly Grove was one such target. Built in 1923 at Edinburgh and Waring Avenues, Edinburgh Bungalow Court was designed in the Spanish colonial revival style. For nearly 100 years, Edinburgh was home to countless residents. In 2015, owners of the charming bungalow court aimed to demolish and replace its rent-stabilized units with a market-rate small lot subdivision of private homes on the site. Concerned neighbors and community members jumped into action. The Save 750 Edinburgh campaign was born, and a public protest was held. Of the many passionate community members who joined the fight was longtime Conservancy member Jamie Wolf and real estate broker Frank Barbano.
There was an article in the Los Angeles Times which said, basically, beautiful old bungalow court needs savior. And I thought, well, maybe this is something I could help with.
Later that year, then Councilmember Paul Koretz initiated a Historic Cultural Monument, or HCM, nomination for Edinburgh. It is rare for the city to step in like this, and HCM status was key in buying time.
Paul Koretz's office stepped in and helped people. It was a whole neighborhood group to stand up and say, no, this really deserves preservation.
You know, I was really pleasantly surprised at the level of generosity and care that city people exhibited, which I was completely not expecting.
By the HCM nomination, the owners continued to pursue demolition. Then, in March 2020, just as the owners were securing a demolition permit, an agreement to sell Edinburgh was finally reached. Jamie and Frank teamed up to purchase it and rehabilitate it for housing.
We took possession in the middle of a lockdown.
Bulldozers were at the gate, so to speak. They were stopped by the legal decision.
Technically speaking, it wasn't difficult at all. Typical things need to be replaced, the footings, the roof. Those are usually the first two things we do, the footing and the roof, and then you can take your time in between. The hard part was we bought it right when COVID started, so things were locked down, difficult getting permits, there's no more counter service, for example. And then you did have There's a contingency of the neighborhood. The overwhelming neighborhood wanted to save the property, but there was people that wanted to tear it down and do a small lot subdivision.
But the rehabilitation project persevered through COVID. Using archival photos as their guide and period materials, the Edinburgh Bungalow Court has been brought back to life.
By renovating it the way Jamie and I did, it was very high quality. I mean, you walk in there, it's a little jewel box. You don't need a huge place to enjoy your life. You have outdoor space. People can drive by, see maybe people outside enjoying the outdoors.
We say it all the time, historic buildings do not save themselves.
I think the importance of the advocacy is the realization that you could not do any of this by yourself, really, but you had to have a group, a collection of people who all felt pretty strongly about it and were prepared to go back and again and again and again, because that's what it takes.
Saving Edinburgh Bungalow Court is a preservation success story, thanks to the power of community advocacy, civic leadership, and the courage of two individuals who came forward to purchase and rehabilitate it. Edinburgh Bungalow Court is ready to be home sweet home to a whole new generation of Angelenos. Downtown LA Proper Hotel. The southern end of Broadway is making a historic comeback with the recent revitalization of the Hoxton Hotel, Herald Examiner Building, and now the Downtown LA Proper Hotel. The original private club facility has been adapted into a chic 147-room hotel, blending its historic roots with modern influences to become a hot new hub for local creatives and travelers alike.
Hi, my name is Morgan Sykes-Jaybush, and I'm the Director of Hospitality Projects at Omgivning. The building was built in 1926 by Kurla and Beelman as the Commercial Club of Southern California. It was really the social annex of the Chamber of Commerce right down the street, and it was built in the Renaissance Revival style. It was a private men's club. The lower floors were from the ground floor to the 7th floor were all public uses, so there was a banquet hall, indoor swimming pool, a racquetball court, and the upper floors were small hotel rooms for the guests. And it lasted as a commercial club just until the beginning of the 30s. And then because of the Depression, it closed. It eventually turned into a hotel called the Case Hotel up through the 1950s. And then in the 60s, it became a YWCA and Job Corps Training Center.
By 2013, when the YWCA sold the building, it was in disrepair following years of deferred maintenance and high use. And so began an arduous rehabilitation and reimagination project to transform this former club into a hotel. The project received the federal tax credits for the restoration as well as the Mills Act, which made the project viable. The team balanced state, county, and city code requirements, including meeting non-ductile retrofit requirements, the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, and the client's programmatic needs. The priority was to maintain as much of the original fabric as possible, stripping away decades of non-historic additions and restoring the building's details to create an elevated experience.
When we started looking at the space, although it was heavily used in the past, it's such an amazing space, we decided, well, why don't we think about this differently? What if this pool in the middle of the building could actually be part of a hotel room? So we basically turned the swimming pool floor into an amazing suite with a swimming pool in the living room.
The original Broadway bronze and plate glass entry doors were repaired, and the 1950s Case Hotel canopy over the main entrance was removed, revealing the original terracotta cartouche, rounded arch, and molded columns. The interior retains many historic features, including the vaulted ceiling in the Broadway Street lobby and the extensive wood paneling that was fully restored and/or replaced in kind were missing. To incorporate a modern flair, the hotel commissioned local artists to create distinctive art pieces, including the lobby mural by Los Angeles-based artist Abel Macias. They also hired Highland Park's 125-year-old Judson Studios, the oldest family-run stained glass studio in America, to design stained glass doorways and windows.
If you're traveling from out of town, you can stay in the fancy suite, or you can just go for a coffee on the roof and enjoy the view.
A vibrant southern bookend to LA's iconic Broadway corridor, the downtown LA Proper Hotel is a shining example of how underutilized buildings can be repurposed as magnificent cultural and economic drivers for locals and visitors. It was the proper thing to do. Carthage Neighborhood's Historic District. What do you get when you combine Spanish colonial revival, Mediterranean revival, French revival, and a splash of storybook just for fun? Only one of the most architecturally significant neighborhoods in Southern California. The Carthage Neighborhood's Historic District is an exceptional, intact collection of historic homes located just south of LA's Miracle Mile. Developed from 1922 through 1933, during a time of incredible growth for Los Angeles, this district comprises 3 subdivisions: Carthage Circle, Carthage Square, and South Carthage. Each is locally designated as a Los Angeles Historic Preservation Overlay Zone, or HPOZ. The colorful array of single-family homes was the brainchild of real estate developer J. Harvey McCarthy. The district's outstanding architecture truly conveys the sense of place in Los Angeles during one of its greatest periods of growth.
Hello, my name is Mary Ringhoff. I'm a senior associate at Architectural Resources Group here in Los Angeles. I'm an architectural historian, and I helped to prepare the National Register nomination for the Carthage Neighborhood's Historic District. The architecture in this area is really remarkable. It's really known as a single-family residential area, but there are also a lot of multifamily, and all of these buildings were built in period revival styles, which were very popular in the 1920s and 30s. So they're these very flamboyant, detailed in their articulation. There are towers, there are crenellations, there's storybook houses, there's Spanish houses. It's just a really wonderful and whimsical and fanciful collection of architecture of really high quality. It really became a drawing point for other developers who wanted to come into that area because it was one of the first ones that were out that far on that end of Los Angeles. And so it really became sort of a model for how other developers wanted to approach their developments.
For decades, the crown jewel of the Carthage neighborhoods was the spectacular Carthage Circle Theater. Prominently located along the intersection of San Vicente Boulevard and Wilshire, the Carthage Circle Theater was an instant success when it opened in 1926. The striking Mission Revival Theater, with its illuminated Spanish-style tower, became famous for its glittery Hollywood premieres and came to be known as the showplace of the Golden West.
So the 1926 Carthage Circle Theater was quickly very famous. It actually drove development in the neighborhood. And then in 1969, it was demolished. So this was not the only demolition in the city that drove really the rebirth of the preservation program in Los Angeles. But the theater was one of the driving forces that really made people sit up and take notice and say, if we don't do something, we're gonna lose everything that's special.
Perhaps it was the visible wound of a lost architectural icon that made the residents of the Carthage neighborhoods especially sensitive to protecting their history. In 2020, the Save Carthage group was formed with the goal of adding the district to the National Register of Historic Places.
Together, these 3 neighborhoods were stronger than they were on their own when it came to expressing their historical significance in a national kind of way.
After extensive fieldwork, background research, and analysis, the nomination was submitted for the California Office of Historic Preservation in June 2021 and was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in March 2022.
I think it just really comes down to the fact that historic preservation, you always think of it as only being about the places, but it's really about the people. A place doesn't mean anything unless the people are there.
Thanks to the hard-fought effort of Carthage neighbors, it will be a beautiful day in this neighborhood for many years to come. All Seasons Brewing Company. Los Angeles is known to millions as the entertainment capital of the world, but there's another crown that LA can rightly lay claim to: car culture. Automobiles played a major role in the development of LA's sprawling, built environment, and as Angelenos' obsession with the open road grew, so did the car industry. By 1937, the intersection of La Brea and Wilshire was one of the busiest in the city, with more than 11,000 cars passing by daily. 1 block south was the ideal location for the new flagship store of one of the biggest names in the auto industry, Firestone. Hugging the corner of La Brea and 8th, This sleek product of the machine age was considered ultra-modern at the time. The aerodynamic design exudes both speed and motion, elements essential to the modern style.
Hi, my name is Eric Needleman. I'm the managing partner of Pouring with Heart. This is just a shining example of just beautiful, streamlined, modern architecture. It's so well known in the city. And so many people in my time with the project have said, oh, that's where I got my tires changed. That's where I got my oil changed.
In continuous operation since 1937, Firestone was designated as a historic cultural monument in 2012, thanks to a campaign spearheaded by the Art Deco Society. But 3 years later, its doors closed and questions loomed about the fate of the landmark building. When plans emerged to adapt the building into a modern brewery, local company Pouring with Heart answered the call, literally.
My friend from high school, Brad Conroy, is our landlord. And Brad is also a native Angelino. He had been chasing down this property for a good decade or so. And fortunately for us, we were the first call that he made as soon as he tied up the property. And the property needed to be converted into something else. A tire store was not the highest and best use at that point. It was fairly run down. I mean, we're talking about an 80-year-old building that was an automotive repair facility. So it was just a lot of Band-Aids, a lot of layers of patching and repair.
In 2018, the design portion of the project started and construction began in 2019. Adapting the landmark building into a modern-day brewery was no small feat. 13,000 square foot landmark maintained its signature Firestone elements. Historic exterior windows were reused to allow visitors a glimpse of the 17 brewery tanks. Period-correct materials and fixtures were used to preserve the vintage feel of the space. They rejected smooth plaster, preserved vintage graffiti, and stayed true to the goal of keeping the space looking lived in.
It was just a wonderful combination and dynamic where we had this idea to bring a brew pub. We had a landlord who shared that vision of doing something special. And then we had a neighborhood that was in full support of it. And the support that we got from the neighborhood was like off the charts incredible. And they were so excited for us to be there. The people involved in the project all deserve credit. It's always a challenge to take a historic property, turn it into something, modern.
This project proves that creative reuse and an appreciation for historic details will literally drive people to come and enjoy. So test out your tires and come for a pint. Tale of the Pup. Programmatic architecture is probably one of LA's most whimsical inventions. Craving a donut? Get one at a donut hole. Fancy a cocktail? Why not enjoy one inside a whiskey barrel? And if you're in the mood for a hot dog, look no further than the legendary Tale of the Pup, which is back where it belongs after almost 20 years of uncertainty. Designed by architect Milton J. Black in 1939, the oversized hot dog won fame by working its way into publicity shoots and served as a backdrop for films. In 1976, Tale of the Pup was taken over by owner Eddie Blake, and even after moving to a second location in the 80s, locals and celebrities continued to flock to the Pup. From Sigourney Weaver to Betty White to Andy Warhol, the Pup was an Instagrammable destination decades before Instagram.
Well, actually, Piggy, I'm not quite at the Comedy Store, but I am doggedly determined to get there.
Hi, I'm Bobby Green from the 1933 group. Our most recent project, as you know, is Tale of the Pup. I personally love programmatic architecture because I'm a car guy. That style of architecture was spawned because of the car, is because, people were driving by and you had to stand out, from a block away. And it's such fun architecture, it's like wacky and weird because we had all this space. We had land that other cities really didn't have. Coming to LA for the first time as a kid, seeing this giant hot dog, to me, that represented what LA was. It was the city telling everybody, hey, we're different. This is our identity. We're a little crazy.
In 2005, the pup was forced to shutter, and the beloved icon was packed into storage. But the 1933 group, which has been restoring historic restaurants for 20 years, including the Formosa Cafe and the Idle Hour, wasn't about to let the pup fade from memory. Bobby Green and his friends were determined to return a beloved icon back to the city and its people.
Some friends of mine actually found it in a storage unit in Torrance, connected with the family, the Blake family that owned it. It lingered with the children for a while. In the end, they ended up donating the hot dog building to Tommy from Valley Relics Museum. Rather than the museum keeping this hot dog for themselves, we made a deal to take it over.
Working under the principles of sympathetic restoration, the 1933 group set out to restore Tale of the Pup accurately through research and archival imagery to ensure each element maintains its original character as closely as possible.
I wanted the hot dog to be on a major street, near a corner, and as close to the original location as possible. So we find this great location. It has room for the hot dog in front of it. And then we come to learn that it was the Doors recording studio in 1970. They recorded LA Woman in the building. Jim Morrison sang his vocals in the downstairs bathroom. So that was like this double whammy of LA history, coming together. So we were so happy about that. Bringing back Tale of the Pup, it brings tears to people's eyes. And when they just see the history of it, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that the Go-Go's were here and Devo is here. Oh, this is amazing. And so it proves that it was worth the wait. If people remember it and it was an identity for that community, it's worth bringing back. It's so important for Angelenos to save our historical businesses, because it's not just a building. There's a heart and soul inside that building. And that's what gives that building identity. It's not just the building itself.
This loving restoration and rehabilitation of an iconic piece of LA architecture proves that you can teach an old pup new tricks. The Hollywood sign. Few landmarks are as instantly recognizable worldwide as LA's own Hollywood sign. For 100 years, it has been a proud symbol of Los Angeles' development and, of course, the entertainment industry. But contrary to popular belief, the sign was not designed to promote the motion picture industry, which, by the early 1920s, was already synonymous with Hollywood. Instead, it was a publicity gimmick for a new real estate development at the top of Beechwood Canyon called Hollywoodland. This expensive advertising ploy cost them $21,000 and was intended to be temporary. So why is it still with us 100 years later?
Hi, my name is Brian Lane. I am a trustee of the Hollywood Sign Trust, and I'm the secretary of the trust. In 1943, the developer kind of went out of business, so they're trying to close out. And so what they did was they donated the land to the city of Los Angeles. And in 1947, this Rec and Parks Commission actually recommended to demolish the sign. And what happened was actually the neighbors actually said, no, we don't want to demolish the sign, we want to keep it. The Hollywood Chamber stepped in and said, we'd like to help repair this and take on some of the work here to keep it in place in 1949. And the agreement that they came to was that they would remove the word land and it would remain as Hollywood.
But even with the community's support behind it, the sign continued to deteriorate. Constructed of wood and located over a coarse terrain, its vulnerability to the often harsh elements of LA's summer and rainy seasons required action.
So in 1973, the sign received HCM status. And at that point, the sign was probably in its worst shape that it had ever been. It was falling apart and everything, but what that designation gave a little extra oomph to the campaign to start to rebuild the sign in 1978. They basically rallied all kinds of folks, from Hugh Hefner to Alice Cooper, Gene Autry. There were a bunch of folks that were engaged to pony up money per letter, about $27,700 per letter. They rebuilt the sign in about 3 months, actually, fairly quick as far as building goes these days.
A few years ago, the Trust began to prepare for the Hollywood sign centennial by conducting a number of projects, including the sign's first structural checkup since 1978.
We did discover some things that had to do with soil erosion that came down the hill. The L's, the bottom of the L's were like little retaining walls holding back dirt at the hillside. And there was many years of old conduits and, security equipment that had been left on the sign that was no longer used. We wanted to do a general cleanup, all leading towards painting the sign. Painting took about 6 weeks, start to finish. The prep of getting it all set and everything took close to a year. One thing to know about working up at the sign is that we have a lot of partners. Because the sign sits on city land, which is part of Reckin Parks and Griffith Park, we're always coordinating and working with them. So there's a lot of preparation to go up there and work on the sign.
With their efforts to strengthen and restore the letters, the Hollywood Sign Trust is taking a thoughtful approach to stewardship for the next 100 years.
When you see images of Los Angeles, the Hollywood sign is probably going to be in the top 10. So much is tied up in our identity with that sign. And I think that is one of the main reasons we have to make sure it continues to flourish.
A confluence of architecture, art, and advertising, the Hollywood sign remains the biggest star in town. And thanks to the Trust's preservation work, it shines brighter than ever. Happy 100th birthday, and the sign is now ready for its close-up. Congratulations to all of the Preservation Award winners. The event is made possible due to the leadership and support of the Conservancy's Board of Directors and staff. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. We hope you have enjoyed our program and are inspired. And now, signing off for the last time at the Preservation Award celebration, I'm Linda Dishman. As we say every year, go out there and keep saving historic buildings. Thank you.